Hello, and welcome to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast. Today is Tuesday, April 15th. Happy tax day to everybody out there. We've got a good show for you today. So today we're going to cover some top returning edge rushers on defense, as well as preview Indiana and Michigan, some Big Ten teams that are pretty interesting this upcoming season. And make sure you stick around for later in the show, where I'm going to give you some players from this year's draft class, that I think could potentially deserve to have their jerseys retired by their college programs in the next few years or so. But before we start, I'd like to ask everyone that you like and follow the show, and also if you've got a question during the show, we'd love to hear it. Your input is a big part of what makes this show great, and we thrive on your energy, your insights, your comments. So whether it's a quick comment, a thoughtful question, or just an opinion that you have to share, don't hesitate to drop it in the chat. Now, if you want to make absolutely sure that your message stands out, gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Just use the super chat feature. Just click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content that we love, and we appreciate every bit of your support. So go ahead, let us know what you're thinking, hit that super chat button. Let's make this show as interactive, as exciting as possible. If you prefer, you can go to gsmcsport.net to tip, donate, leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support. We are so glad to have you as a part of our community here at GSMC. So let's talk a little bit about some edge rushers today. Obviously, this is a premium position. More and more importance is being placed on your pass rush in present day and modern football, especially at the college football level, where you see a lot of teams are passing the vast majority of the time on offense. So one guy I'm really looking at this year is Suntarine Perkins from Ole Miss, University of Mississippi. So Suntarine Perkins was a former 5-star recruit. This was a big-time pickup for Lane Kiffin when they got him to commit out of high school. Really one of the crown jewels of his recruiting tenure at Ole Miss. Kind of a big-time pickup for him. Kid from Mississippi, didn't let him leave the state. It was huge to get Perkins at Ole Miss. So he as a freshman, he kind of played off-ball linebacker a little more. They're trying to ease him kind of into the defense, into learning the scheme, learning the system. So he really rotated in at off-ball linebacker. It was clear that the talent level was there. Probably just wasn't used to the college level at that point as a true freshman. Last year, they pretty much transitioned him full-time to the edge as a true sophomore, and he really had a strong season. Had 10.5 sacks, had 60 total tackles last year, and was kind of grew into that role as a really premier pass rusher for the Rebels. He's going to be the big piece for Ole Miss for their defense this year, and he's going to have a little bit less help. He won't have defensive tackle Walter Nolan in the middle. He will not have his bookend, Princely Uiagalelei, on the other side, rushing the passer opposite of him. So it's really going to be on Suntarine Perkins this year to kind of lead the way for Ole Miss, to be the guy that they look up to make big plays in key situations. It's going to be on Suntarine Perkins. And this is a guy that has the talent. He can clearly do it at a high level. We just haven't seen it a whole lot. Kind of similar to Abdul Carter from Penn State, where they transitioned to that edge, and he's still growing on the edge. He is pretty small for an edge rusher, though. He's only 6'1", listed at 210 pounds. A guy that's really going to try to beat you with his speed, with his quick first step, explosiveness, and he's really going to try to use a speed rush to beat a tackle outside and get to the quarterback. But Suntarine Perkins is a guy that really has potential as a 15-sack guy, especially kind of without some of that help. It's going to be interesting to see, does that either help his play or does that kind of detract from what he's doing on the field? We're going to find out. But I think Perkins is a guy that could really have a great season for the Rebels. Another guy I'm looking at that's really kind of flying under the radar, I didn't really know his name that much. And then I looked at numbers and I was like, whoa, this dude can play ball, is Eric O'Neill. So Eric O'Neill was a JMU guy, was at James Madison with Kirk Cincinnati, and now he's transferring to Rutgers. He originally was a Long Island kid, went to Long Island University for 2022-2023, played at that level, and really showed out. During that time, he had 45.5 tackles for loss in those 2 seasons, really showcasing his ability to get in the backfield, to put pressure on a quarterback, on an opposing rushing attack as well. And he was also the Conference Player of the Year in 2023 for Long Island. This is a guy that can do it. Then he went up to the next level last season, played at JMU for a year, and he really went off. He had 13 sacks, 3 passes defended, had an interception, had 52 total tackles. So he carried that production up to James Madison last year. Obviously went up a level in competition and just the caliber of athletes that he's kind of playing with. He jumped up and he still was able to put up some numbers. So now going from James Madison into the Big Ten, Eric O'Neill's going to be at Rutgers. Rutgers doesn't have a whole lot this year. This is going to be a guy that's really going to be looked at to force that pass rush, to kind of generate it and get some sacks for Rutgers. I think that just the level of production, clearly this kid has a drive to try to compete at the highest level, has moved up in competition twice now. Obviously, JMU is now an FBS team in the Sun Belt, but it's not the Big Ten. Rutgers, they could have a tough year in the Big Ten, but I think Eric O'Neill is another guy where his numbers might showcase really what he can do in kind of a higher program, higher caliber setting, higher caliber competition in the Big Ten. I think that's going to be a guy that his numbers may look a lot better, and it could be a name we hear a lot more towards the end of the season, kind of flying under the radar right now, just because of James Madison, because of not really coming from a high-profile program. I think that's a big part of kind of where Eric O'Neill is really falling under the radar, but I think that's a name to look at for this season. Another name, the last name we'll know, is Matayo Uiagalelei, Oregon defensive end, younger brother of DJ, obviously, and he's really starting to step out of the shadows of his brother. He's honestly been the better college player. Obviously, they played 2 different positions, but Matayo's been a guy for Oregon. He had a really good year last year, 10.5 sacks, forced 2 fumbles, had a pass defense, had an interception, had 38 total tackles. This is a guy that's probably going to be the face of the Oregon defense this season. He's also going to lose a little bit of help in the form of Derek Harmon, who is going to the NFL this season. Potential first-round pick, probably a day 2 guy, but still a really productive defensive tackle that really helped out Uiagalelei and the Oregon pass rush just overall. I think this is a guy that is bigger. He has really good positional size. He's 6'5", 265. He's got a solid frame where he's strong, but he doesn't look too thick, doesn't look too big. And he really has unique athleticism for the position. He played both ways in high school. He played tight end. He really could have been a strong tight end recruit as well, where he probably could have been a 3 or 4 star tight end and played at a power program as a tight end. So this is a guy that clearly has a lot of athletic ability, and he really kind of uses that athleticism to beat blockers. He's really explosive, really agile, has strong change of direction, especially for a defensive end. He moves well laterally across the line of scrimmage, when defending against the run as well as just defending against the pass, obviously. But this is a guy that's going to rely on his athleticism, and he will beat blockers just because of that athleticism. Is still a strong pass rusher, has a lot of tools in his moveset, but this is a guy that's really going to use his body to try and expose blockers, exploit kind of an advantage in athleticism. That's going to be Matayo Uiagalelei. I think he could also have a really strong season, especially just Oregon will probably still be in contention for a college football playoff berth and for a national championship. And Matayo Uiagalelei is going to be a big part of that. Another guy I'm looking at is Mikail Kamara from Indiana. This was a huge part of their defense. He was a guy that was maybe going to go to the draft, decided to stay at Indiana for another season, run it back with Curt Cignetti in year 2. I'm going to talk a little bit about them later on in the show, but another guy who had a really great 2024, had 10 total sacks, 47 total tackles, and he's only 6'1", he is 265, so a little shorter, but still has a really solid frame where he's not going to get pushed around. He's really sturdy in his moves, in what he's trying to do to get to the passer. This was a guy, though, he led the FBS in quarterback pressures last season with 68 quarterback pressures, which is a crazy number, especially playing in the Big Ten. That's a conference where you traditionally have really strong offensive line play. Obviously, I ranked them as the number 1 conference yesterday, I think, for coming into this season. It's a strong league, and the fact that Kamara had 68 total pressures while playing mostly Big Ten opponents is really impressive. He is also going to be switching positions this year, so he's going to move to what Indiana calls their stud position, and it's kind of a hybrid off-ball linebacker, hybrid stand-up defensive end position, but it's really going to let him focus and key in on rushing the quarterback, and I think that's going to be something that's really interesting. Obviously, he had a great season rushing the quarterback last year, and if he's going to be keying in on the quarterback even more this year, those numbers could go up even more. Kamara, I think, is a guy that is really going to have a great season for Indiana. And I think if they're kind of still in the national conversation in November, you're going to hear his name a lot more than we currently do right now. The last guy I want to talk about a little bit is TJ Parker from Clemson. Clemson has kind of had a rough stretch on defense the past year or two. I think they finished 69th last year in total defense. Obviously not where they want to be if they're trying to compete for a national championship, for a college football playoff berth. He was a big pickup for them in 2023. This was a high 4-star, one of the guys that were really kind of bookending that recruiting class for Clemson. He's mostly a stand-up pass rusher. He's got a really strong natural bend. He's able to get around and kind of bend around tackles really easily. That's kind of his big calling card as a pass rusher. He's also just really, really well-rounded. He's got a lot of speed movesets, obviously, just with that bend, but he can also use his hands. He's got a lot of power sets as well, and he kind of switches it up to beat blockers, which is a big thing for his success. I think he's also really smooth just in his movement. He moves well. Doesn't really ever look like he's awkward or kind of out of place. He always kind of seems to be in the right place at the right time. And again, had a strong 2024, 11 sacks last season, 57 total tackles. And then I think the big number for TJ Parker is that he forced 6 fumbles last season, which that's a really big number. 6 forced fumbles. I'm not sure how many Clemson actually recovered. I did not look that up. But the fact that TJ Parker's forcing 6 fumbles off of the edge is really impressive, and kind of shows how he uses his hands really well, is able to get to the quarterback and just kind of get that ball out of there. That's a really impressive skill that not a lot of guys can do at a high level and can do it consistently. but TJ Parker clearly can. And I think that's something that's really key to what makes him a good pass rusher, a strong pass rusher, is just his ability to kind of use his hands and get the ball out of the quarterback's hand, the running back, whoever it is. But 6 forced fumbles on the season last year for TJ Parker, that's a really big number. And if he kind of keeps that up, he could be even higher in this conversation for edge rushers that are returning. So now we're going to take our first break of the show. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about Max Crosby, Eastern Michigan, and kind of his new role there. So stay with us, and we will be back shortly on the GSMC College Football Podcast.